They dropped the entire China benefits. They first conceded that the China trade war is inevitable, not the tariff will inevitably lead to escalation or land. The evidence says that causes U.S.-China nuclear war, our terminal impact evidence indicates that leads to extinction. This means it's tried after the affirmative. They don't have any argument about why consumption focus or production focus is the root cause of this. They don't have any argument about how they access these advantages. It all means the affirmative is necessary to solve extinction in the short term, independent of how they might be able to access our environment impacts. It means that if we win any mitigation or any kind of offense on the K, this is sufficient to vote negative to vote affirmative to the solar advantage. They have no way to access our disease impact either. They conceded that solar is necessary to prevent blackouts that destroy our public health response to make disease extinction inevitable. This is another thing that has nothing to do with production or consumption, meaning that the affirmative is necessary to solve it, to try or die for us now. They critique. They first, a couple framing issues at the top. First is, I don't think that they have a terminal impact to the K, except for the assertion that they turn the K's we control uniqueness because warming and all of our other terminal impacts are happening now. They don't make an all-solvency argument about why it's sufficient to solve any part of the case, especially our warming impact, which means that we control uniqueness on these and it's try or die, especially on every other part of the case. Second is a linked distinction. We don't advocate producing more energy. We advocate that we should produce different energy and have a different approach to production. Their arguments are all about how it's incompatible to increase energy production. That's not compatible with the K. Our argument is that we should be producing different energy, which they don't have a link that assumes that argument. Now, this role-playing argument, I'll answer it at the top. I don't think that this is particularly coherent. They've considered that we need advocacy to change policy now or show 7 evidence from the 1AC says that our focus on public debate over trade policy and criticism of government's current policies and effective political strategy for getting the government to implement our policy means these arguments about role-playing being irrelevant, these arguments about role-playing being irrelevant assume that we were just making framework arguments, but they considered that our specific argument about how our advocacy is politically productive in and of itself, not because it gives us policy education, means none of this was responsive. Now, only we have a coherent and effective method for changing societal behavior to resolve any of the impacts of decay. Ace point scale, or McKibben and Kippert evidence that individual focus causes ineffective solutions because we misdiagnose the problems that are society-wide and causes individual backlash because people don't want to sacrifice their personal comfort. Each person would functionally have to start a movement against themselves, which is not feasible. Set B is self-interest, or Rechlinsky and Barnheiser evidence that self-interest and greed are deep-seated psychological forces that make each person continually want to consume to better themselves. Changing those forces is a long-term proposition that might not even be possible, but we don't have time for that kind of deep-seated cultural shift. Since warming is happening now and they don't have any defense, our evidence says that it's happening rapidly now using economic incentives and renewables to harness people's interests and reduce the destructiveness of their nature and the damage that their behavior does to the environment in the short term is a more effective strategy for solving our impacts in the short term. C is necessity. Consumption focus is ineffective because it has no basis for deciding when somebody has had enough and they don't need any more. Our Park evidence says that that causes an oppressive shaming culture where people with larger or different needs from other people are resented and denied the goods that they need. Our food and water impacts are both impacts to this because they prove that the alternative to rejection of production tells people that they need to make do without the additional food or water they need instead of growing or eating enough. Those are 2 more reasons that it is try or die for us, and their internal link turns our food production impact. Luker says that unless we increase our food production capacity and efficiency, and people who are hungry will destroy the rainforests and other parts of the environment globally in order to try to get the land they need to produce the food they need. This is a reason why an increase in production, that kind of production focus, is necessary to avoid environmental destruction because sometimes we do need production to deal with needs that people can't just say that they've had enough of. The concession of that is a straight link turn, and another reason to strive or die. That's an internal link to the environment that they don't have any game on. Another reason why we control uniqueness for that. Now, their only alt-solvency argument that even sort of responds to any of these indicts of the alternative is a card that says that it is a card that includes as its only warrant that structural forces and the failure of production will focus that we have will ultimately force people to see the logic of the view of the principle of sufficiency. If this argument is true, that it overwhelms any of their link arguments to the plan and proves that the permutation stalls because nothing we can do can prevent the eventual transition. They don't have a warrant for alt-solvency that the links would be able to overwhelm. Their only alt-solvency argument is this structural claim that they neither have an argument about why the alternative is necessary for it, nor a link argument about why the plan would prevent it. It means the permutation would allow alternative solvency if they win it to overwhelm any reason the plan would hurt it. Now, the permutation, we can both do the plan and adopt the principle of sufficiency that their evidence is talking about. Parasite made the argument above pretty clearly about how we don't say that we need to increase production. We say that while we have some degree of production, that production should be of an energy source that doesn't hurt the environment. Second is this, they make this argument about how we do not make arguments about how we need to limit energy. That's really just a link of omission. By including their advocacy in that, we can make those arguments about needing to limit consumption while also saying what kind of energy we should be consuming now. They've also conceded the argument that solar is different. They don't have an internal link or an impact to why consumption is bad, even if they win that we perpetuate it, since solar is different from the energy. It's a clean and functionally infinite energy source because we can harness as much as the sun can put out, means that no matter how much we increase consumption in the world of the affirmative, it doesn't hurt the environment or have any negative effects because there is because there is no impact of that consumption. If you solve the terminal impact of consumption, make consumption no longer destructive, then there is the assumption of their evidence that consuming hurts the environment is no longer applicable. Now, they make this argument about how they're key to change the government's mindset, about how we don't change the government's mindset. The arguments I made just above about how we take out the internal link to why that mindset shift is necessary, take this out. They also don't have a strategy for changing the government. We read the show evidence specifically to talk about why our mode of advocacy can cause the government to change its trade policy. They don't have an argument about how they can cause the government to adopt a new mindset. It means only we have an effective political strategy. They also don't have an argument about why reorganizing or reorienting the government would solve the case. All their evidence and all of their impacts are about individual choices, individual behaviors, the way individuals approach the environment and their consumption and economic behavior vis-a-vis the environment. That means that our approach outweighs, because we've read evidence about how even if the government changes their approach, they can't actually force people to change their consumption preferences. The government is effective for creating incentives to reorient people's consumption. They don't have an argument about why the government is good at getting people to change their desire for consumption in the first place.
Can you see the 2AC to the K?
Yeah.
As well as the T arguments.